All right, everyone, welcome. Happy Saturday. We made it to Saturday. Hope everyone is doing great today. How is your weekend going so far? I look a little bright here, don't I? I think I do. Do I look a little bright to you guys? Something's not quite right with my camera. What's wrong with my camera? Something's not right. A little better. Too bright. There we go. Woo! All right. So, the weekend is here. All right, I have a little bit of news here before we get started. First thing is, move this over. I started working on Google's user experience design certificate through Coursera. I've just started working on that. I like to tear through it quickly, but I don't. There's a lot more there than I expected. There was. It says there's about 6 months worth of work. I'd like to take. I want to get it done in half that time, but I don't know. We'll see how that goes. So I'm doing that. And today I put in an application for another job in Madison, which looks like it's a fairly good match for me for my web development experience and stuff like that. So I'm kind of excited about that. Kind of a friend of mine from work who actually just left for that company about 4 or 5 months ago let me know about the job since he knew I was looking for work. So that was kind of nice. And then next week, I will not be streaming as I'm looking for work, and I'm going to be working on that Google certificate as well. So that's kind of what's happening with me. My weekend is mostly just going to be that, actually. How about you guys? You guys doing anything of interest on this week? During this weekend, we have like one more week for Halloween. I don't know what we're doing for Halloween, if anything. You know, pandemic and all that. Not sure. Usually we go to a friend's house and we go to trick-or-treating in their area because they have it's a better area to go trick-or-treating in. We probably won't be doing that because of the pandemic and all that, but I don't know. We'll see. We will see what happens. I got some bills and stuff to take care of this weekend, and that's pretty much it. Yeah, gotta do that. All right, it's quiet. Let us get started. Got lots of neat articles to go over. Start with this. Public transport can be free. Let me do this in the right order. All right, there we go. So this is actually a fairly long article. There's lots of history. This is a really long one. So if you want to get something to drink and eat, now is probably the time to do it. Oh, this is from 2018. Okay, so this is from August 2018. It's a little bit dated, but it's not enough that it's going to matter for a conversation like this. All right. Public transport can be free. We don't put coins in street lamps or pay by the minute in public parks. Here's why we can make subway and bus fares a thing of the past. Come on, I gotta scroll. If we are to believe transport experts and practitioners, abolishing fares for all passengers is the last thing public transport operators should be doing. For Alan Flausch, an ex-CEO of the Brussels Public Transport Authority and current Secretary General of the International Association of Public Transport, in terms of mobility, free public transport is absurd. Of course it is. A profit. According to Vincent Kaufman, a professor of the University of Lausanne and one of the key figures in sustainable mobility, free public transport does not make any sense. Getting rid of tickets in mass transit is judged irrational, uneconomical, and unsustainable. However, if we turn to comments from outside the field of transport, the perspective on fair abolition changes radically. Social scientists, activists, journalists, and public officials often speak from cities where fair abolition has actually been put to the test, fervently defend the measure. For Judith Delheim, a researcher at Rosa Luxemburg Stiftung in Berlin, providing free access to public transport is the first step towards socio-ecological transformation. For Michiel van Hulten, one of the earliest proponents of free public transport in Europe, it is about returning to the commons. Finally, according to Naomi Klein, this is precisely what cities around the world should be doing. To really respond to the urgency of climate change, public transport would have to become free. Yeah, a lot of good things in here. Again, and Alex, man, how you doing? Welcome. Good to see you. How are things going? It's been a while. Doing anything crazy this weekend? I'm just I'm looking for work, and I'm doing Google's user experience design certificate thing through Coursera, and I'm gonna be doing bills. You have to multitask? Oh boy, good luck with that. I'm pretty much focused on one thing at a time. I don't multitask all that well. Focus, get it done, move on, go to the next thing. Oh, okay. Formula One, watching people go around in make left turns for hours. Sounds exhilarating. That's what they do, right? They just go around in circles? Or is Formula One different than the other thing? Pretty sure Formula One is circles too. Has real circuits where they have right and left turns. Ooh, fancy. They splurged for those extra turns, huh? Well, good. I hope you enjoy what you're watching and it goes amazing for you. Yeah, I never got into that sort of a thing. The only thing I really watch, I'll watch the Green Bay Packers play American football. Tennis, I'll watch tennis. That's pretty much it. If I'm super bored, I'll watch billiards or possibly figure skating. And that's pretty much the only things I will end up watching. Yeah, the car thing never did it for me. Never, ever. Or martial arts, of course. Martial arts tournaments are a thing I'll definitely watch too. So I have a brown belt in Shaolin Kempo Karate. But it's been over, my daughter's 12, so that would be like 13 or 14 years since I've actually practiced actively. So yeah, those are the only things that I would generally watch. But yeah, I hope it goes well for you. Gotta have lots of turns. So yeah, public transit, it is one of those steps towards kind of working towards a sustainable society. We have to get rid of cars and get more mass transit. But like we talk about here, that it's very difficult to do in today's, the way urban design is done today, because things happen more or less organically and they're not designed around mass transit, and adding it can be very difficult and very expensive. But it needs to be done. I mean, like in my small town, 12,000 people. I mean, we don't have mass transit, but we definitely need it. I know a lot of people's lives would be definitely a lot better if we had it. I don't know how that would look like. Maybe electric buses might be the way to go. I watch a YouTube channel lately that is mostly about U.S. police abuse, and it's really something in your ballpark. If you watch one video, it's not that special, but if you watch a lot, you see a trend developing. Oh, okay. Sure, throw it in here. And I can take a look later. Yeah, it's pretty insane how horrible it really is here. I mean, it's as inequality rises, that sort of violence increases because the point of the police is to enforce property rights and to protect the 1% and their property from the rest of us. Yeah. Oh yeah. It just gets worse. The brutality is just, it's horrific. Like every decade or so, a police officer will murder a person of color, and then there will be race riots. It's just the way it goes. It's the way it's been since, the 60s, since the early, even before that, like the early 1900s. There have been white people, police officers murdering people of color, and then race riots exploding. And I have that one post on this from the long hot summer of 1967, and about the Kerner report that followed that mass of race riots following the officer murdering a black man, I think it was. And what they all say, what that report says, and pretty much every other report that's looked into this sort of a thing, is that, well, Americans need to stop being racist fucks, and 2, lower inequality. I mean, there's nothing complicated about this. We know exactly what the problem is, and we know what the solution is, but why solve it? Thanks. I'll go ahead and take a look at that. It's just a crappy thing. Oh, this is the other thing I wanted to tell people about. So we read this article on decolonizing Africa last week through the NMT lens, which was an amazing article. Then we also read this other article talking about the problems created within Africa following the leaving of white people from their colonialism. And I added this part to my post on how a resource-based economy might play out if it ever did. So I added the fifth option, the Pan-African Decolonized Union. Basically, it's a Pan-African Union decides to fuck capitalism because it is inherently colonialist, imperialist, and racist, and then it does its work towards becoming a resource-based economy. So that was pretty cool. If you haven't read this one, actually, I'll go and throw this in for you because you haven't been here in a little bit. This is that article, which was really great. You can go ahead and read that. Okay, there you go. All right, so yes, free mass transit would make a lot of people's lives a lot better, and especially if it's electric and sustainable. Like, most of us wouldn't need cars for most of what we do. Like, especially in our small town, I can walk to a bunch, but there's a store or two I would definitely have to take transport to. But I don't leave the house that much, though the wife does definitely do a lot more. And then that would also have us working more towards using our bikes as well, and of course making the cities much more walkable and so on. That's much like I think Sweden is doing a big job of doing that, making their cities getting rid of cars, outlawing cars in certain areas. Or is it Denmark? I think it's Denmark. So they're outlawing cars in certain areas, they're turning it green, and then they're having people use bikes and walking and that sort of thing. And that's the sort of thing we should be doing, as well as increasing mass transit, and especially if it's powered through sustainable energy. All right, fare-free experiments. In spite of the controversy that it apparently creates, the number of cities experimenting with fare-free public transport, FFPT, is on the rise. In 1980, there was only 6. By 2000, the number had grown to 56. Today, fare-free public transit exists in full form in at least 98 cities and towns around the world. Full fare abolition means that ticket-free rides are available for the vast majority of local public transport routes and services, for the vast majority of users and for most of the time. In several hundred more cities, fares are suspended in a partial way, either in specific city areas or modes of transport, or in specific periods of the day or year. Here and also in Germany, there are a lot of city centers where you are not allowed to drive with a diesel car. Would a normal gas car be acceptable? Or just no fossil fuel based cars? For now, yes. Okay. For now, yes, meaning both, or just diesel? Oh, there's a delay here. What? But there are also areas where there are no cars allowed. Okay, cool. Yeah, good. That's exactly what should be done. That's a great stepping stone towards reducing cars. Yeah, just no diesel. Okay. Gotcha. Interesting. Cool. Yep, needs to be done. All right. The United States is where the first reported case of full fare-free public transit system occurred in 1962 in the town of Commerce in the Los Angeles suburbs, and where most full fare-free public transport programs could be found throughout the 1970s, 1980s, and 1990s. At that time, the proponents of fare abolition in North America relied on social and political arguments, pointing to the anticipated social benefits of abolishing fares and claiming that zeroing out fares could help increase the use of public transport and counter the high investment in automobile infrastructure. Okay, yep, sure. The formula cars are hybrids? Oh, are they really? That's cool. When did... Interesting. So they must just use the electric, just kind of tootling around, getting ready for a race, and then they use the gas for the race, right? It's like in Star Trek, you got impulse power, which would be the electric, and then the gas is for the warp speed. The largest cases of that time, now discontinued, were located in Mercer County, New Jersey, and Denver, Colorado. Today, fare-free public transport exists in 27 localities across the United States. Small urban rural areas, Edmond, Oklahoma, Katuna County, Idaho, university campuses, Chapel Hill, North Carolina, Macomb, Illinois, and natural parks and tourist resorts, Crested Butte and Estee Park, both Colorado. The first European experiment with abolishing fares began in 1971 in Coulommiers in the suburb of Toulouse, France, and was soon followed by Rome and Bologna. Perhaps the most renowned historic case of fare abolition is that of Hasselt in Belgium. Faced with problems of high traffic congestion, its mayor declared in 1996 that we don't need new roads, we need new ideas. Hasselt dropped plans for constructing a new ring road and instead eliminated fares and reformed the network of collective transport, giving it clear priority. Increases in operational costs and changes in the local government have subsequently led to the cancellation of Hasselt's fare-free policy in 2014. Bastards. And this is again a part of the policies from the federal governments could be helping to subsidize this sort of a thing, and that would be a very good thing for like the Green New Deal to sponsor, or some other environmental package to help communities shift to mass transit, free, sustainable, public mass transit. Ever since the 2000s, a plethora of fare-free systems emerged in Europe, where most 56 of the world's cases of full fare-free public transit are found. A particularly large number of them are located in Poland, 21, all of which have emerged since 2010. In France, 20. Many European municipalities justify fare-free public transit as a strategy for reducing car usage. Avesta, Sweden, Elgato, Poland, and car-related pollution and noise, Torshavn and Faroe Islands. We have undergrounds. Right, so you have undergrounds. Undergrounds meaning subways. In some places, yes. In some of the larger cities, yes. Definitely. But as you'll see, the images on the interwebs, ours are pretty much crappy. They're not maintained very well. Definitely not as compared to Japan or pretty much any European country. Of course, because it's very hard for corporations to profit off mass transit. I think how many times have I used I've used a train once in going from Belarus to Germany and back again. Subway, I think I used in DC when I was there for a week. I think those are the only 2 times I've used a train or a subway. Yeah. Yeah, we have. They're just in really big cities that can afford that sort of a thing. Ever since the 2000s, a plethora of fare-free systems emerged in Europe, where most. I just read that 21. Okay. Did I? Yes. In many towns, sociopolitical arguments are used. Fare-free public transport is explicitly conceived as a social policy aiming at helping disadvantaged groups, as in Lubin, Poland, Colomiers, and Compiègne, France, or as an attempt to redefine collective transport as a common good. Aubing, France, and Malawa, Poland. Yeah, these are all good arguments. You know that it works really well. You park your car at the outer areas of the city and continue with the subway. That is way faster than ending up in traffic jams. Yeah, definitely. And just cities need to be designed from the ground up to really to have sustainable energy and mass transportation in mind for it to really work. It's hard to really add that stuff, tack it on afterwards. Like I say, we need brand new cities designed from the ground up for sustainable energy, mass transit, vertical farming, and all that sort of a thing. It's just, yeah. So much work to be done. Traffic jams suck. The geography of fare abolition thus embraces small or mid-sized towns with less than 100,000 inhabitants. Most of them rarely make news. Have you heard of, oh my god, Kosierzina or Vitra Halstahamar or Lugoj Velene Akureyri? An important exception is Tallinn, the Estonian capital, which is the largest city, 440,000 inhabitants, to currently host ticket-free program, providing a strong argument that the fare-free public transit can work in larger urban areas. Advantage for Estonia is that they have one of the most digitally advanced public government infrastructure, so it makes it easier for them to do it that way. Because they do everything from an app on their phone or from the website. Still, transport experts seem convinced that fare abolition is irrational, senseless, and irresponsible. How to understand the fact that it nonetheless exists in nearly 100 cities worldwide? Below, I turn to the debate and illustrate some of the arguments with examples from actually existing fare-free public transit programs in Tallinn, Estonia, and Aubing, France. The choice of these cities is not accidental. Each of them is important in studying fare-free public transit. Aubing, located in the suburbs of Marseille, is among the most widely discussed cases of fare abolition in France, an important center of fare-free public transit. Tallinn, meanwhile, promotes itself as the capital of free public transport and is actively promoting this policy domestically and abroad. Interesting. Harmful and irrational. Most transport academics and practitioners discuss fare-free public transit in terms of its utility, efficiency, and contribution to economic growth, or lack thereof. The idea of abolishing fares is criticized for threatening the financial stability of public transport networks. Free access to buses and trams eliminates revenue from tickets while increasing the cost of maintaining security and responding to higher passenger demand. So, okay. So, relying on revenue from tickets effectively punishes. It's a poor tax. Is effectively what it is. So getting rid of tickets is a good thing, and giving people who are economically disadvantaged access to mass transit is a good thing. It can help enable their upward mobility and chance to do things that they would ordinarily not have access to. As a transport official from Montpellier, France, explains, zeroing fares is a policy that deprives public transport of resources essential for its development. Furthermore, according to many transport engineers and economists, public transport should function as a self-funded or for-profit agency subject to market mechanisms. No, it absolutely fucking should not. It's, you know, much like we have the argument about the postal service. It's not there to make money. It's there as a public service, and profit is not its primary thing, and that it should never be. Profit should never be the motive of a public service provided by the government. Profit should never be a concept. Sustaining, possibly, but never ever profit. And public transit should never be about profit either. It should be about a public service. Fare-free public transit is therefore a fake good idea based on the illusion that there are goods or services that have no cost. In other words, reducing the price to zero allegedly devalues the service to both its operators and passenger clients. Finally, fare-free public transit is often portrayed as an irrational idea. Supposedly, fares are not only a source of economic revenue, but also as a mechanism that controls passenger behavior. Without tickets, passengers would make trips that engineers deem marginal, non-productive, or even useless. Put simply, the existence of tickets is what keeps passengers from going insane. I mean, there is a... May I ask if in your normal newspaper something is written about Glasgow? I don't read newspapers. Most of everything I get is online. I'm sure somewhere someone is talking about something in Glasgow. Is there something specific? That's happening that you're talking about? On my news? I have not read anything recently. The only news I've gotten heard about was what was it? Panda came on like a few weeks ago, and he's a member of the Green Party in Scotland, and he was talking about things that were happening in Glasgow. But that's pretty much it. That's the only thing I've heard about Glasgow, I think, at all recently. Can't think of any articles we've read that have talked about it. Well, let me check Discord. Nope, nothing about Glasgow specifically, at least in the titles. Follow up on Paris Agreement, major worldwide climate conference. Oh, okay. I haven't read anything about the Paris Agreement yet. I know COP26 or some shit's gonna be happening here in a little bit. Paris Agreement. You know, like I say about the Paris Agreement, it's nice and all to have these conversations and to sign these documents. Well, I get most of my links here from Facebook. That's where I do a lot of it. Facebook and or Twitter, depending on what comes out there. But yeah, I haven't seen anything about the Paris Climate Agreement. The next meeting on it. I've seen an article or two on COP26 or whatever, but that's pretty much it. Well, here in the United States, you have to understand that sure, some of the places will talk about it, but it's not in the corporate interest to talk about that sort of thing, because obviously that it promotes the understanding that climate change is it? Yeah, well, you guys actually may have a level of actual real news there. We don't have it here. We have propaganda. Because, if they actually really, talked about it a lot, people would start actually possibly doing something about it. Then the politicians would have to start doing something about it, and their corporate owners wouldn't ever want that to happen. Right? The corporate media is the propaganda arm for, of course, the corporations and the 1% who only want profit regardless of the cost. Yeah, I wish I wish we had actual, democracy here, actual news here instead of propaganda. But that's the way the United States goes. Is there anything I should know about it? Since you're bringing it up? If you have an article on it, feel free to throw it in. We can take a look at it. So yeah, so like the Paris Climate Accord, climate agreement, it's nice and all to have these meetings and, sign these papers, but the papers don't do anything. They have, it's political performance theater because they're not binding and there's no enforcement mechanism. It's nice to do it, for the awareness and say, okay, well, this is a good idea, but then there's only one country that's even honestly attempting to meet the Paris Accord agreement, to meet the requirements of the Paris Accord, and that's it. So it's, yeah, it's signing. If the paper had enforcement mechanisms, then it would be something more of news. Other than that, it's not. Big news is, of course, that countries don't do what is right. That's exactly what I'm saying. I mean, there's only one country that's even coming close to it. So it's like, I mean, how many are most countries are not taking this seriously? And why is that? Because there's no profit in it. And to actually make the changes needed is going to cost a lot of money. Like I say, right? If a bill that Congress passes does not start at basically $10 trillion, at least here for the United States, they're voting for human extinction. I mean, there needs to be an incredible amount of money spent in order to even come close to meeting the climate reducing the greenhouse gases. I mean, sustainable energy, vertical farming, reducing pollution, all that sort of stuff. It's just a shitload of money, and they're not just not going to do it. I think 1/8 of what is necessary. Oh wow, yeah, that seems about right. I know there's some countries that are working on it. We actually was it Sweden? We read an article on Thursday. Sweden is going to be fossil fuel free in 2045. Is it? Yeah, fossil fuel free Sweden is within reach. I think they're headed for 2045 to be fossil fuel free. A bunch of it by 2030. And that's on Discord if you want to go there. That's in if you go down to, or you can go to Reddit. It's also there too. Stream stuff, content covered. It's down there. Some things are done in the EU as a whole. That's cool. That's the way it should be. Countries should be working together to save humanity from extinction. That's the way it should be. We just need to be doing more. There just isn't enough being done. Especially the United States. I mean, the United States, as I say, right? If the United States is not on the vanguard of the war on climate change, we're effectively screwed. Because the United States is perhaps one of the largest polluters in the world. I mean, they are the largest historical polluter, but they're also one of the largest polluters as well, especially because of the U.S. military and all the violence and destruction inflicted by that. All the, the jets, the missiles, the bombs, tanks, all the infrastructure destroyed in all those countries, all the people murdered in those countries, and so on. It's just, United States has to lead, otherwise we're screwed. And this isn't an exceptionalism thing. This is, United States is the richest and most powerful country in the world, and if we get on board with the war on climate change, there is a shitload of political and economic power that we can leverage to get others to do it too, or to even do it for them. And I've talked about, what we need to be doing with Africa and Central and South America and the Middle East. Europe and America needs to be sending billions, if not trillions of dollars to these areas because for reparations, for how much we've been stealing their wealth and in genocide and slavery for the last 400 plus years. That would make things go a little bit faster. Tidbit. All right. However, some analysis point out that abolishing fairs can help decrease equipment and personnel costs. Getting rid of the various devices and machines used to sell, validate, and control tickets saves money. No money has to be spent on secure cash management, systems that include counting rooms, cameras, cash pickup, and deposit services. No commission is paid for third-party ticket sales, paper or electronic tickets, and accounting services. At the same time, the lost revenue from ticket sales usually constitutes only a part of total public transport budget. This means the actual cost of maintenance and investment in public transport system are never fully covered by its passengers. The public subsidy plays a much more important role in this regard. These arguments are supported by the evidence from Tallinn and Albang. Before Tallinn switched to a fare-free system, only 1/3 of the operational budget of its public transport network was covered by revenues from fares, while the remaining 2/3 were provided by a direct municipal subsidy. Crucially, free fares are offered only to registered residents of the city. As a result, between May 2012, 7 months before the implementation of fare-free public transit, and May 2016, the number of Tallinn residents increased from 415,000 to 440,000, visibly attracted by access to free rides. Since Estonian municipalities have the right to collect part of the residents' personal income tax, and the average tax contribution per resident amounts to $1,600 per year, gaining 25,000 new residents meant generating 40 million of additional revenue per year. This largely covered the money lost from fares, 12.2 million, and investments made to respond to increased demand, 11.7 million. As a result, instead of losing money, Tallinn gained 16.3 million per year. That's interesting. That's part of their tax system. So they say municipalities have the right, Estonian municipalities have the right to collect part of their residents' personal income tax. Okay, interesting. That's interesting. So that's part of the reason why Estonia can make that work. In Albang, revenue from fares was even less, 8.6% of the operational budget, and fare dodging was common. The switch to fare-free public transit in part enabled local authorities to increase the versement transport, a tax that French municipalities can collect from local companies with more than 11 employees. Following French law, the tax could be increased from 1.05% to 1.8% once Albang committed to building a right-of-way tram line, a project that should be seen as integral to the shift to a fare-free network, which, besides zeroing fares, meant a thorough redesign and improvement of public transport services. The increase in the versement transport raised revenues by 5.7 million, which, together with operational savings, 160,000, largely covered the cost of fare abolition, 1.57 million. Yeah, so it just boils down to offsetting fare loss with taxes. I mean, yep. Unsustainable? Another set of arguments regarding fare-free public transport revolves around the question of its capacity to contribute to sustainable mobility. In this perspective, transport is seen as a key component of the good city, which is not only economically strong, but also socially cohesive and diverse, environmentally friendly, healthy, and participatory. Unsatiable 1776. You want free transport? Fuck yeah, we do. Mass transit needs to be the way that all of our cities are designed from the ground up. Because cars are a complete and total fucking waste of resources, waste of space, waste of just about everything. Would that mean I can travel to Japan and it would be paid for via taxes? Well, Japan, probably not, right? Now we're getting into air transport. But maybe if you were in Europe, there might be a bridge or train going to Japan, right? It might be possible. But yeah, why free? Well, so everyone has access to it. And so that because, you know, any sort of low-level fee is basically a poor tax to those who are economically challenged. New trash means testing my travel. Exactly. It's just, if it's free, it just means everyone's gonna be able to use it, and there's a great reduction in the number of cars. If you can use free, why not use free, especially if it's high quality? I want free transit to anywhere I want because it's called free transit. I do too. Sign me the fuck up. And that's the way it should be. Between every single city should be, and town should be, some sort of mass transit. Like Hyperloop, maglev train, something of significance. You know, like here in the United States, all of our mass transit is, you know, it's garbage. It's so old and not very well maintained, so that people don't really want to take it. And that's part of the problem. Like in Europe, Japan, and these other countries, they do a good job of maintaining their public transit. And if you don't do that, and it looks like garbage, people aren't going to want to use it. And that's part of the reasons why Republicans and Democrats vote to defund or reduce funding for these sorts of things so that people can buy cars, because that's where money's at. If teleportation became a reality, would it be free so I can be disintegrated here in the US to Japan? Is that considered transit? Sure, it would be. Sure. Yeah, teleportation would be amazing. That would be like fusion. That would radically change everything. That's one of those magical technologies, like the replicator from Star Wars, that or Star Trek, that would have far-reaching social and cultural, political ramifications. But free means you pay it with your tax money. I'm not in favor of polluting for free. So with mass transit, the amount of environmental pollution is greatly reduced. And part of, if you want to make mass transit work, that has to go almost hand in hand with sustainable energy, right? It's not just, again, it's not just electric cars. Much like people are like, well, electricity is whatever, right? Sure, but it's not electric cars that are a problem. It is the energy source that is the problem. That is what needs to change to fix a lot of this. Not taking a plane, I take a carbon neutral way to Japan. I just don't want to pay out of pocket if your free mass transit becomes law. Yeah, that'd be amazing. Free transit means free. Yeah, that's the way it should be. That's the way it should be. If we really want to help deal with climate change, mass transit, free mass transit everywhere is what needs to be done. Most definitely. And again, it's very, in a lot of cities, it's gonna be very difficult to do because our cities aren't designed to handle mass transit. Like, I'm in a small town of 12,000 people. A subway isn't necessarily going to work here. I suppose we could possibly. I mean, the town center is pretty small. I mean, I can walk across it. So what we would do here is probably like vans or small buses for mass transit. We should start eating people and make the dead into trees and create maximum age limits to combat climate change. Well, okay, the dead into trees, that is part of my policies. That's a much more sustainable way of dealing with burial. And that's the way I want to be, when I die, to be dealt with. You have cemeterial forests, most definitely. Maximum age limits, okay, that you don't need to do. Maximum age limits is ridiculous. So if you want to deal with climate change, it's sustainable energy and end all pollution is what it boils down to. I mean, it's not like here. Since you're new here, I have a policy site. Here are my policies. Here are my environmental policies, which is going to require massive urban redesign. And also I blog about politics as well here. Well, see, age limits isn't really the large part of the problem. No sustainable energy and pollution controls take too long, and the effects of climate change would already occur. Well, right, but we're not going to just start murdering people. Well, but here's the thing, right? If the United States was serious, we could have radical change in 10 years. Radical change in 10 years. I mean, not just here, but globally. If you want to deal with population, I have a whole post that I've started on this whole topic because the overpopulation bullshit drives me nuts. It's not a population problem. It is it's a part of the demographic transition concept. If we euthanize those over 95 to 100 and eat people, and make the dead into trees, we can beat climate change. So murdering people is not the right answer. If you want to reduce the population globally, what you do is you shift second and third world countries to first world status. Once they get the infrastructure, then the population goes down. That's just the way it is. Like the United States, France, and a bunch of other countries are dealing with a population decline. I think mass transport should be more convenient and cheaper than using your own car, but if you make it free, then people will use it in the sense that they will travel a lot without real need. Right, and that's what one of the people here talked about. And I get that from a standpoint of psychology. I can kind of see that as well. But anything other than free, effectively, it becomes a poor tax. So what you can do with that, right? I mean, you don't have that problem in, well, people taking, who are you to say travel is abusive? We only get so many days off, so why wouldn't I want to spend it in another country? With me, but sure. Well, he's talking about. I mean, they're talked about in here. There is some psychology about it. If there isn't some sort of a cost, people are just going to use it all the time, and maybe even just taking joyrides on it, which I don't have a problem with. Right? I mean, we have it. Take it. I mean, the train is going back and forth. There should be people on it. Otherwise, it's wasting the energy and all the stuff, everything and everything to make that service work. So one way to deal with that, Anaholics, is through. I've heard that before. Very fresh. How you doing? How should we deal with overpopulation? If we tame immortality, okay. So by the time we get to that point, we'll have things like mind uploading, and we'll be on other planets and all that sort of a thing. So that's you raise me science fiction, I'll give you science fiction. That's pretty much what it's going to come down to. You can only abuse it so much as the workforce allows you to. If you only get 2 weeks off a year, you can only abuse it. Okay, well that's a fair point. That's a fair point. Unsatiable 7076. Fair point. And yeah, that's a fair point. If people, now the only possible way really, if people are going to, well, okay, so we can start going into this area where, the next 50 plus years, there's going to be a marked decrease in the number of people. People are going to lose a lot of jobs due to automation and AI and 3D printing and that sort of a thing. So there's going to be a lot more people who don't have jobs. So that's probably where free sex robots. Why not? Let's put the free sex robots on the free mass transit. How about that? Let's get that 2-for-1. That way you don't get bored on your mass transit ride. Yikes. Oh my God, where was I going? I was going somewhere. Yeah, so as people start losing jobs due to automation, there's definitely going to be more people who are going to be willing to take to be on the trains. But also with much larger scale mass transit being free, people will have the ability to move from one area to the other to move so they can have better to go to jobs that are available. So that would be a good part of that as well. But as we deal with that, there's a lot, right? Universal basic income, federal jobs guarantee, and shifting to sustainable energy, training people for that, and so on. I want a harem of loyal sex robots, free travel to Japan, 2 weeks off a year, and also I want to eat people medium rare and live up to stay allowed 95. Okay, well, sex robots are coming. Free travel to Japan isn't coming anytime soon because you need, well, either a plane or a boat. I don't know about the boat thing. Maybe that's something that can be arranged. But eating people, you might go insane by doing that. Isn't that the case? I think there's a significant rise in mental problems if you start eating people. And if you want to not live past 95, well, there are ways of dealing with that. Only the brain and the spinal fluids? Oh, okay. Okay, well, maybe that'll be okay. Yikes. I am sure there's a recipe book for how to cook people properly somewhere. I'm not sure. Insatiable 7076 is bringing a thing here to stream today. Or Wild and Wacky on Saturday. Yes, eating people. All right. To increase quality of life and livability, the proponents of sustainable mobility focus on the challenge of facilitating a shift from cars to public transport and soft modes such as cycling and walking. Yep, this is a large part of it. And of course, you have to shift your urban design to facilitate walking and cycling. Like Sweden, I think, and Denmark are really big on this. They've been doing that for like a decade. I thought people would call me crazy as soon as I mentioned Bruno. Oh, God. Well, I watch Science and Futurism with Isaac Arthur, right? So they're very much into the Netherlands. Okay. They're very much into that sort of stuff. Like, what will the future be like for once we transcend our current, K1, pre-K1 status to like a K2, K3, Kardashev sort of world. It gets into generational spaceships, seed ships, and terraforming and all that sort of stuff. So yeah, future has a lot of potential here. A lot of potential. We've got Matryoshka brain worlds, right? Lots of possibilities. Oh, and from the potential abuse of the train system, I mean, that can also be a very much a cultural values thing. You really have to start talking about PSAs. We won't have a future if we don't drastically change our behavior now. True statement. And I've been saying here for quite a long time that, effectively, you're right. If we basically don't solve the problem in the next 10 years and put that much effort into it, pretty much all human life and almost all life on this planet will be gone in the next 200 or so years. The only way forward is to tax carbon pollution and eat people. Eat people, no, but taxing carbon pollution, yes, that is part of my policies. Yep. Think we'll not have a future if people start getting used to eat people as a solution to the horrible meat industry. That's a yes. Yes, that will result in a huge population decline, right? And there have been cultures in the past which they do eat their dead, right? So that way, like the memory of their lost brothers and sisters and family stays with the tribe. It's the ultimate in recycling. I can't imagine it'll taste good, especially Americans, all that high in fat. Ugh. Ugh. They were at a time. God. Oh my God. You wouldn't call it ultimate. Okay, fair. From this perspective, sustainable transport researchers claim that disincentivizing the use of cars through parking policy, congestion, charging, or increasing fuel taxes is more effective in terms of regulating car mobility than abolishing fares in public transport. Moreover, it's assumed that new passengers attracted by fare-free public transport are pedestrians and cyclists rather than car drivers. Consequently, for many public transport operators, reducing the price of tickets to zero works against efforts to increase quality of their service. Purple, we got here. Temple of Marduk. How you doing? Heard you guys. Alec Baldwin, liberal extremist, icon extraordinaire, decided to go on a shooting spree. Yeah, I've read about that. I haven't read much about it, but it's pretty fucking horrible. A, it's not a shooting spree. B, it was a massive accident. From what I've read, he's a producer of the movie that they were shooting, and they weren't using union members to cut costs, and that may have been the result of improper checking of the gun and the ammo, which resulted in the death of, I think their director or something like that. Yeah, it's not a good thing, and he's not a gun person. He doesn't like guns at all, and so it's just horrible all around. Someone lost their life. Just everything is just not good. It's another example of why you shouldn't skimp on safety. Is it unethical to reboot a sex robot AI if it becomes sentient and wants to leave you? I don't know about that. Why do they have to use union members? Well, it's not so much. It's it'll come down to the quality, I suppose. The quality. I mean, they've got standards that you have to meet and stuff like that. Whereas just bringing in any random person that doesn't have that, the mass support plus the institutional drive for safety, doing your job properly. At least that's my thought on it. That's what I've read about it as well. And I haven't read too much about it. I've seen mostly just a few tweets talking about the issue potentially. Although because Alec Baldwin is producer, he's the one who also chose to skimp on the quality and stuff like that. I have a bachelor's degree in computer programming and an additional associate's in computer programming. It's basically the only way to fight back directly at whatever situation your boss would be able to put you in. Yeah, I mean, yeah, unions have significant advantages for the workers, most definitely. That's a whole thing. Yep. Coder. I have no experience in AI at all, although it'd be interesting to get into. Actually, I'm in the process of taking the Google User Experience Design certificate currently, which is usability. Mostly front end. I have not gotten into the full stack part. I know I kind of need to, but I haven't, because mostly for the last decade I've been doing website administration. I've been an administrator. Yeah, so my degree was C++, Visual Basic, Java, and then I've learned some PHP, JavaScript, of course HTML, CSS, and that sort of stuff, and that sort of a thing. Okay, I'm super wary of all the leftists talking about unions because none of them work traditional union jobs. Fair. I don't. They look down on plumbers, electricians, carpenters, factory workers that are never, ever talks to a grad student. Their thumb. Yeah, no, I mean, there is a lot of that going on. Don't get me wrong. I agree with you. That is a thing. But something I've come to appreciate as a leftist streamer, as I've growing here in my politics, that looking down on the people that basically make the world run, besides us computer people, right? I mean, without houses and buildings, civilization wouldn't exist. I mean, it's a whole different set of necessary skills. Temple of Marduk. Oh, thank you so much for the follow. I appreciate that. And in my policies, education, I make sure that college is definitely what we need to be aiming for, but also we need to make sure trades are a part of that. Pro society is a good thing. If you're against it, we're gonna have a problem. But trades are very, very necessary. Without it, civilization doesn't exist. And part of, like, they started having I don't know when they started having kick on college, kind of pushing college on our schools, but we also need to have the almost an equal representation of unions as well. Our children need to have access to trade skills as well, because you never know if you're going to like a trade unless you have access to it. So that's a big thing. Education is one of my most important policies, and it's also a part of my 8 philosophical pillars for peace too. It's that important, because education creates the adults of tomorrow, and should the military have a union to protect its members? It already does. Well, I mean, no, it doesn't have one. Okay, so I was in the military too. I'm a veteran from the Persian Gulf War. I was on the USS Enterprise, which I think we were responsible for the initial bombing of Iraq. So, Curly Bear, how you doing? Good to see ya. You're here. Ooh, a little early. Good to see ya. Did you put people in CI boxes or no? I was on a carrier in the middle of the ocean, like 100 miles off the coast or something like that. So all I did was I was a nuclear reactor operator. So all I did was sit there and watch some gauges barely move. That's all I did. Yeah, they would never let military. Did you grow? No, I was in the middle of the ocean. I was Navy. I did not directly, no. All as far as I'm aware is we were responsible for the initial bombing of Iraq. Horrifically. Should military have a union? They would never allow that, because the military is there to serve the capitalists. Because the United States is the largest terrorist organization in the world, and the U.S. military is the largest terrorizer. Well, maybe the second largest terrorizer of the world, next to the CIA. I'm not sure. We have to get the numbers on that. Although, of course, the CIA creates a lot of the problems, and then the U.S. military goes in to fight against it. Sure. I mean, the police serve the 1%. The military serves the 1%. They all do in one form or the other, right? It's just a matter of how and when. Sure, the Coast Guard does good things, and they go out there and they save, people who are lost or whatever. But that's where you came up with your name too, right? Yes. Yep. I was on a sub, no. But that is where my name Free Xenon comes from, and I carried it with me since the military. I have an whole article on that, because people ask about that, because it's kind of strange. They do things worthwhile. I mean, well, it's military, so I don't know enough about it. They do save people, right? Free. Okay, yeah. So this is the origin of my name. It's from my days as a nuke on the Enterprise. When liberal media started advocating saying Afghanistan on the grounds of social progressivism, NPR. Yep. Yeah, that's just a way that they keep the fear up so that they can support going back in. Yep, it's pretty horrible. Again, because the media is the propaganda arm for the 1%. So of course they're going to do that. Did I get allowed to? No, I didn't go into college until after the military. So I took a 4-year degree and I crammed it into 3 years because they had the option of doing it 3 years nonstop. Nope and nope. Look down on working class. We really wouldn't say, so I guess we might shit on them when they don't fight for things that they actually benefit. And it might sound stupid. Other people would decide that, but most leftists usually have a better education and more free time, leading them to be able to. Possibly. I mean, are there co-eds in the military? Oh my God, dude. Come on. Every single leftist is different, right? Because every single leftist's background is very different. We're not all college educated. I mean, most actual leftists most likely aren't going to be 1%ers, aren't going to be capitalists. I mean, essentially you can't really be a leftist if you are a capitalist or if you are a 1%er. Something of that nature. Guys think you understand better than themselves. Leftists are weak. We need to eat the weak leftists alongside the rich and literally. Oh my God. Yeah, that's his kick. Unsatiable 7076 is about eating people. That's his bag. That's one of his ideas about dealing with climate change. Like me too much. The more I like leftists who at least admit their ranks are filled with useless weirdos. I respect those ones because they means they're willing to work to change the left. I'm gonna be real with you. The public ain't fucking me leftist. A doctor. Okay. Well, I mean, they're assholes no matter where you go. Left and right and center and non-political. Well, how do you know a leftist isn't a worker in and of itself? I mean, you're creating that artificial divide and making that projection that people who are left aren't workers. In the end, leftists still rely on information provided by the working class a lot of the time. They can. They most definitely can. Again, every leftist is different. How people get to their leftism is also very different. Like as I've gotten more into politics, I've become much more acutely aware of my privilege. White, middle class, male, college educated, right? I've got all of that going for me, and there's just so much privilege in that. It's just insane. My life has not been made difficult by any of those things. Because being a leftist is a useless identity and cultural signifier. Well, labels are violence. Also, do they have to understand the details work, or can you understand someone is having value taken away from their labor without knowing like anything about work? Well, you can always understand anything conceptually, right? Well, okay, so a lot of people, especially in the United States, don't have the time to even think about politics, right? Because we got wage slavery, debt slavery, just all the horrors of being impoverished and struggling day to day. Most people don't have a clue about politics because they don't have time, but that's the way the system is structured. The 1% in the corporations, the rich people, don't want people having time off to educate themselves. Because once they do that, once they are able to think critically and not, just working to survive and trying not to be homeless, then they have the ability to start thinking critically and really having that time to research things. That's when the people will start to stand up. And that's what they don't want. Who doesn't work? Yeah, most people work in one form or another. There's a bundle of opinions that come with being a leftist. Left-right brain is so cancer. I think I struck a nerve with the future grad student chat. Don't worry, just invest in the crypto and maybe you won't have to work. I made 10 times my investment off crypto. I cashed it in at the beginning of the year. You're working. You're 18. Okay, 18. Well, you're in a. I've actually had quite a few young'uns in here, which is kind of cool. You're here into politics this early. You're way ahead of the curve. I didn't get into politics until my 30s. Again, that's part of my privilege, right? I didn't care about politics. I didn't care about religion. Fuck that. It's ugly. It's corrupt, and nothing good comes of it. But it was when I started caring. Well, gay marriage is what got me into politics. Just caring about other people and the ridiculousness that's going on to others. And that just started my drive from researching and writing about social sexual issues into all of the other things that we're talking about today. I should be having fun. I would feel super guilty if I wasn't doing this. It's like all of us can have our part in helping to make things better. Mine is writing blog posts, live streaming. I'm running for school board, right? It's like, and this is just me doing my part to help save humanity from extinction. Not that that's going to happen or anything. Not that we're going to save humanity from extinction, but at least I'm trying to do my part. I started at 14 without actually understand communism. So yeah, politics definitely was. Yeah. Well, what drove you to that understanding? Again, my privilege kept me from having to even think about it, so I didn't get to it much later. What situation led you to that? I expect there's something that was happening around that time that pushed you to understand that. Factorio. I've heard of it, but I have not played it. Interesting. Cool. Well, good on the game for getting you there. And I was like, what if we just manage a supply chain together? Oh, okay, cool. Yeah, commons. That's exactly what we should be doing when we talk about resource-based economy. Managing the supply chain together globally. Capitalism is the best driver of humanity so far. Nope. Even Marx admitted he was jelly. It would be far more efficient. Yeah, you're exactly right, Brave Fresh. No, capitalism is horrific. It's responsible for poverty, war, global human suffering. It's horrible. Don't get me wrong. It has had its use in driving humanity forward. The post-feudalism transition from feudalism into capitalism. It has far outlived its usefulness in humanity. It kills over 20 million people every year. Y'all state education? Yeah, I wasn't a fan of it either. My grades were horrific in high school, like 2.71, like C minus. I barely graduated. Fortunately, because of my time in the military, when I went to college finally after my 6 years, I had a 3.71 average, which was pretty good. But right now, I kind of like it as I understand how much cool stuff I actually learn. Okay, good for you. Good for you. Learn as much as you can, because being an adult, it's going to suck. Capitalism got us out of serfdom. We're going back to that now because of monopoly capitalism. Well, we're right, but that is kind of the end game of capitalism. It's going to be a dystopian nightmare where the 1% owns everything, and then us 99% have nothing, and we're just going to end up eating each other to survive while the 1% lives off everything. But it doesn't need to be that way. I mean, I have a post here which kind of explains the reason why that is, the core driver of why monetary systems create our society that way. I know my regulars are tired of me sharing this, but this is perhaps the most important post I have on my blog because it talks about the very basics of why everything is the way it is because of capitalism. Child labor, yeah. Luxie, how you doing? Good to see you. Yeah, I just saw some tweets on that, right? Some state is reducing the beginning age you can work to 14 to help deal with the labor shortage. Yeah, oh yeah. That shit's fucked up, yo. Why don't you just fucking pay a living wage and then kind of solve that problem? Give health benefits. I mean, hello. Yep, back to child labor. It's coming full circle. Capitalism is coming full circle. Whoa, hold on, get back here. I just felt like it was so useless, mainly because I didn't know why you'd actually need that education. I felt like a lot of jobs were meaningless. Yep, bullshit jobs. Read David Graeber, Bullshit Jobs. Very early on, I just knew that by having a global supply chain, you could learn things by actually focusing on big issues and knowing you get to help. Yes, exactly right. I said something here already. Oh, okay, I'm sorry. Did I see you previously? I'm sorry. My bad, yo. Nothing personal. Good to see you. Chat's a little more busy than normal. I'm okay. I'm taking Google's User Experience Design Certificate course. Kind of working on that. So I just started that like yesterday, actually. Second thought also. Yeah, second thought is pretty good. Pretty good. And that's if you... Yeah, that's kind of the core of a resource-based economy, that we globally manage our resources and our supply chain. Go and throw a link in here. I won't watch it on stream because I'm streaming, live streaming to Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and Twitch. And YouTube fucking freaks out if I play YouTube stuff because they might hit me with a copyright strike or some shit like that. So sometimes I do streams where I don't stream to YouTube if I know I'm going to do a lot of YouTube videos. Or I'll plan on doing YouTube videos and I won't stream to YouTube. Then I won't have to worry about the copyright bullshit. Yeah, but throw the link in here. You take a look at it after stream. Livers promote stuff like OnlyFans and stuff now, though. Yep. Can you imagine telling your child, "Hey, just follow your dreams. You can be a teacher or a prostitute"? Hey. OnlyFans is not prostitution. That sounds super scary to me that this is acceptable sex trade. Well, listen. Yeah, no, I have a whole post here on prostitution, on why it needs to be legalized, decriminalized, and regulated. It is a big deal. Here, you want to solve this issue? Make sure women have free access to healthcare, housing, education, childcare. UBI, basically, right? And that too. You give them, you take care of the women, and then they don't really have a reason to do those sorts of things. Some want to, some enjoy that, and that's awesome, right? Do what you want to do. I don't have a problem with OnlyFans. But what you'll find is once you, because a lot of these women that I've had some people in my Facebook stream that are doing OnlyFans. They're doing it to make ends meet. If you get rid of that make ends meet problem, OnlyFans prostitution will go away. It won't go away completely because some people really enjoy it and that's their thing and that's awesome. But most of it will end up going away because they do it to make money. There you go. Then the sex trade would just dissolve anyway. Yeah, it would. I mean, well, it would, as long as money exists, human trafficking will exist because there's money to be made in doing it. But we won't be able to even have a chance of evolving beyond human trafficking until we get rid of money, until there's no money to be made in human trafficking. What's the problem at all prostitution? Nothing. I don't have a problem with it. A lot of people that do that love doing it. Yep, exactly. That's what I was saying. Even though the industry is shit, it's all basically invisible to you if you don't look into it either. Yeah, exactly. I don't have a problem with it in and of itself. And that's why I wrote my whole post on this about decriminalizing, legalizing, and regulating it, right? I mean, I agree. And some of the services, there's a TED Talk with a lady who was a sex worker talking about, how they help people deal with things. Like people who don't have access, like who are disabled or have other social issues going on, that they get, service from them that they wouldn't normally get access through dating or something like that. Sexy trade global and human trafficking. The majority of prostitutes around the world are taken against their will or coerced into. Yeah, human trafficking and prostitution are not the same thing. You have to I talk about that in my post too. You have to separate those two things. Not every sex worker is human trafficked. Now, I do say that we do need to have a global working towards ending human trafficking. Actually, do I say my policies? I say it somewhere. I think that I'm all for the abolition of the death sentence, but I thought that the only crime that I would probably keep the death sentence around for is human trafficking. In the third world about sex work is great. Well, right, but that's part of the human trafficking. That's not a sex work thing. That's not work. That's human trafficking and rape. Serial raping. Believe me, I get it. So teaching people they can be prostitutes isn't a problem because they would choose to be one. Oh, some would, yeah. Some would. Some most definitely would. But the key thing here is most people wouldn't choose to be human trafficked. There's a difference between sex work and being human trafficked. Those aren't the same things. Sex work would be voluntary. I mean, voluntary, right? And sex work and human trafficking, most assuredly, isn't voluntary. Now, there's also, we can get into the concept that women who are doing it because they don't think they have any other options because the system has fucked them over, that's not really voluntary either. And as we get rid of all of the reasons, you know, the economic reasons why men or women, a lot of trans people go into this as well because of the bigotry towards trans people. If you get rid of a lot of the issues that people have, then we can get rid of most of it. Agree that things aren't exactly voluntary in American Patriot, thank you for the follow. Aren't exactly voluntary on capitalism, but unfortunately you probably don't agree with that part. Just in general, there is a disparity in the sex havers and the have-notters, and the number of men that have access to sex nowadays is less than ever before. There always be yeah, exactly. Yeah, I agree completely, and that's and part of that reason, Girly Bear, I expect is highly because of our toxic patriarchal society. If we get to a much more equal society, like you're saying, there will still be sex work and people will do it and will want to partake in it, but the need for it will be definitely, hopefully less. If you're not getting laid, then get off Twitch, GoXLR or something, buy better clothing. Oh, but it's not preying on women. If they are sex workers and they're voluntary, there's nothing to prey upon. However, if they are human trafficked, yes, then that is highly problematic. Right, exactly. But the problem is, essentially, it's hard to know if any sex worker is voluntary or if they are being human trafficked. That's the big issue there. Now, obviously, if there are states where it's legal, then that becomes at least a little more, quite a bit more clear. As it exists now, the vast majority is exploitative. I hate sex in general, so I have a negative opinion of it anyway. Okay. Well, yeah, no, I mean, you're right. A lot of it is exploitative, but not all of it is. Don't get me wrong. We need to end human trafficking. And we need to end the serial raping and drugging of women as a part of human trafficking. But sex work as an actual line of work that is voluntary and done, especially where it's legal, or the porn industry, or OnlyFans, that's all fine. I understand your anger, but you have to start being a little more objective in the way you look at this. Being raging against human trafficking, yes, definitely do that. That's a very good thing. But sex work is a valid line of work, although it's much more difficult within capitalism, especially in the United States. In countries where there's high levels of inequality, it can still be quite exploitative because they may not have a choice and they'd rather do something else, but the system has fucked them over, which may end up with, drugs, prostitution, and stuff like that. But there are some who, especially in places where it's legal, where it's what they enjoy doing and they make really good money at it. Right? God, when I was in the Navy, I heard this is a little bit different. This is strippers. That there were strippers in Miami that made in excess of like $100,000 a year just, working like 2 or 3 days a week in Miami, a major city. Right? It's not sex work, but still there's a lot of money to be made in the industry. And it's even better if you enjoy it. And it's, well, preferable if it's actually voluntary instead of people going into sex work because they feel like they don't have anything else left. And that still is that is systemic and structural violence is what that is. When they feel like they don't have a choice other than to do that. And part of how that happens is, of course, that when it's illegal, that goes on their record, and then they can't get another job again, except for doing sex work. It's this vicious cycle, and I write about that in my policy here, not my policy, in my post here on sex work. Legalize it, decriminalize it, legalize it, regulate it, and that's what needs to be done. Period. Full stop. And then, of course, I say this in my post as well, we need to have a much stronger global attack on human trafficking. Does that make sense? Any other comments on that? Go and share it again. Again, there's my page on. I wrote this in 2009, so it's definitely a little bit dated, especially on the links, but it's still quite relevant. What else is going on today? So I was reading this post on public transportation should be free. And this is a giant ass Jacobin post. This is what we were going through. And I think we might get through it, maybe, possibly. keeping me on the straight and narrow. Yeah, definitely, it should be free. Public transport and our cities need to be designed again from the ground up for public mass transit, and we need all of our cities to start shifting to mass transit as a part of our fight against climate change. To think that capitalism can't patch up the problems. Well, right. Well, here, read my tension within methods of exchange. Actually, no, here, read this. This has a link to that post, my Cancer of Capitalism post. This goes into the problems, and this also goes into the solution. Because exploitation and suffering, sociopathy is rewarded within capitalism, and that's what this post talks about. If we tax the hell out of people with cars, public transportation can be free. Well, you can do it that way. I mean, this post was kind of talking about it, at least on a local level, unless it's subsidized, nationally by the federal government. The taxation has to be a part of it, and part of it can be that you increase the taxes on selling of cars in order to support the infrastructure. That is one way to deal with it. And that's what some of these countries have, or these municipalities have done. Why tax people with cars? Why not eat people who have cars? Oh my God, dude. Show people you mean, but that would be one way. Eat their family member right in front of them. No car for you, 1 year. Okay, from this perspective, sustainable transport researchers claim that disincentivizing the use of cars, which they're talking about here, through parking policy, congestion charging, or increasing fuel taxes is more effective in terms of regulating car mobility than abolishing fares in public transport. Now, so this might be, right, that increasing the costs of getting a car, but this, of course, ends up being a poor tax as well, that people who are poorer will suffer the most from this. People need cars to get to work, to get their children places. And this is one thing we can do, but we have to be careful not to be destroying the lives of those who are disadvantaged. So if you're going to do this, you also need to increase or make free public transit. That way, those who are going to struggle the most with this increase in taxes, right, that they have a way of getting around. That is a requirement. Otherwise, you're fucking them over. Without sound economic principles to get in the way, every liberal argument makes sense. Well, of course. I mean, on the non-federal level, taxes are required for everything. That's just the way state, local, state, county, municipal policy works. The federal level is totally different. Federal level, you pass a bill and the money is magically there. All right. Moreover, it's assumed that that new passengers attracted by fare-free public transport are pedestrians and cyclists rather than car drivers. Consequently, for many public transport operators, reducing the price of tickets to zero works against the efforts to increase the quality of their service. Now, as they showed up earlier, those who have kind of compensated by taxation a little bit helped offset that and even made a profit to an extent and could increase their quality. Not required, you can run a country on minimum. You can't. Federally, you can. Federally, you most definitely can. You need taxation on the federal level. One of the big reasons is to lower inequality. A big reason for federal taxation is to lower inequality, because that you have to do. Otherwise, you get what we have here today. Well, how would you power a county government or a state government or a city without taxes? I do think it makes sense to tax everyone for transportation, including those that don't use it, because it incentivizes them to use it. Fair. It's true. You can run it on money from companies or by just causing inflation. Fire the government. That. Okay, what then? What do you do then? You must be a libertarian by saying that. That's a libertarian take, if I'm correct. And the most Americans are very much programmed to do everything by cars, and yeah, it'll take something to get people off of cars. Well, the question is, the next question you need to ask is, why do they not run it well? And cap. There you go. With fire the government, but let's replace them, not fire them. So, okay, yep. Okay, so if you want to get to a world beyond money, I agree with that completely. That's what my policies are all about. Stage 3 is shifting to a resource-based economy. That's exactly right. And you can't get rid of most of our problems until we get rid of money, because money and profit is the primary driver of global problems. And my post here talks all about that, the cancer of capitalism and the problem with money. Restructure it, rather. Yep, my whole policies are all about that. I think the U.S. needs a representative coalition government. Yeah, voting is a huge problem. That is the first policy that I wrote, because in 2016, following that shitstorm in 2016. It's amazing how many things have to change in order to have anything borderline representing a democracy in this country. I won't say it's the most important, but it is. I have it second. Educational reform is the most important thing. Then we got electoral reform and the other things. But right. It's because electoral reform isn't sexy. It's not a sexy issue. I mean, we've got constitutional amendments, Voters' Bill of Rights. Voting is a constitutionally protected right, and the Electoral College, proportional representation, consensus-based democracy. And some are talking about shifting to a bicameral or unicameral legislative body, getting rid of the Senate or the House. I haven't put that in here yet. I need to do more research on that. Public funding of all elections. We read an article on democracy dollars, which seems pretty interesting. News and media reform is a huge part of it. Reinstate the Fairness Doctrine, repair the Telecommunications Acts, break up the media conglomerates, hold voting reports, do not publish vote results until all are counted, because this affects how people vote, require exit polls, fact-checked candidates, equal airtime. Each state really needs to push, a municipality needs to push the knowledge of elections, eliminate caucuses, require open primaries, limit superdelegates, eliminate requirements for writing candidates, ranked choice voting. I mean, there's so much that needs to be done. I really think it is, because right now we have two right-wing parties, true statement, that don't represent people, true, who strike down everything the previous president of the opposing party would build up while wasting trillions. True statement. At least with coalition, you'll come up with, exactly. No, I agree. Again, you can take my policies and put them in whatever order you like, but electoral reform, it's first, second, it's right up there at the very top. Most definitely. This is super important. But the other thing about the electoral reform won't really mean anything without an educated populace. Democracy cannot exist without an informed electorate. So it's kind of the chicken before the egg sort of thing. You put it wherever you want for a second, it's all good, right? But without an educated populace, voting isn't really going to matter. But if you do all these reforms, that will help us get there. But in order to have an educated populace, you also need to lower inequality. You need to deal with economic reforms. Now, what I say here in my introduction, an important concept you must understand for all politics. Right, I go through a lot of that here, and part of that is you can't have a good education without lowering inequality. Poverty is absolutely destructive to children and families. We need an informed, intelligent electorate. So hey, I got an idea. Let's put government in charge of education. Well, but how do you take? Yeah. So I mean, you've got a point. Right now in the United States, that is highly problematic because we have high levels of inequality and corporate ownership of the government, and that is a problem. In countries like Norway, Sweden, Finland, the Netherlands, right? They don't have a problem with that because they have low levels of inequality, and societally they have very good values. They have eco-humanistic values. Here we don't have that. So this is a societal values problem. This is an unbridled capitalism problem, right? So again, yes, exactly. And that's why here, the most, what you need to understand here is now to help you understand why this is, as well as to really get the most out of it, any answer, my policies are just about any political significance, that then you really have to have at least a basic understanding of the following concept, that all things are interdependent. This fact is why the 8 philosophical pillars for peace, that interdependence is the first and most important of the pillars. So it's not just simple as, I talk about that down here, don't I? Here we go. So here's an example. To solve educational issues, you must solve economic issues because poverty is devastating to children and their learning. To solve economic issues, you have to solve electoral issues. To solve electoral issues, you must solve political corruption. To solve political corruption, you must solve criminal justice. To solve criminal justice issues, you must solve societal moral and value issues. To solve societal moral and value issues, you must solve educational issues. Every single thing is interdependent. To solve one thing, you have to solve all of the things. It's all interdependent. Your socioeconomic status can determine how you do educationally. It can also determine how well educated you are in voting. Right? That's the first part of my policies is the 8 philosophical pillars for peace, and this is honestly the most important part of my policies right here. This is the sort of values we need to be promoting and talking about. Interdependence is the most important part that we need to understand. Capitalism, monetary systems, is an abject rejection of our interdependence. Oh, what do I code in? So my university, it was Visual C++, Java, Visual Basic, and then I've learned JavaScript, PHP. Yeah, those two. HTML, CSS, that as well, which that technically isn't programming, but anyhow. So interdependence. So we need to start having a value system that pretty much acts as a counter to the sociopathy inherent to capitalism and to monetary systems. Monetary systems it creates sociopathy. It thrives on sociopathy. It requires a sociopathy in order for it to continue. I call it JSON. Yeah, JSON is just a way of using JavaScript. Right. It's a format for JavaScript for sending data back and forth. CSS, it's not programming. CSS is not programming. HTML is not programming. JavaScript is programming. I think it might be Turing complete. So like with web development, there's 3 layers. There's the structural layer, which is HTML. There's the presentation layer, which is CSS. And then you have the behavioral layer, which is JavaScript. And once you get to the behavioral layer, that's the programming aspect. Oh, although you could get into that If you have a CMS, there's programming behind that through PHP and that sort of a thing that generates the page. So sure, that part that part definitely is programming. Not too many, Lexi. Not too many. So yeah, interdependence. And the fact that all issues are interdependent and that you can't, in order to fix any given issue, you have to work towards fixing all the issues. Solving educational problems requires economic issues, electoral issues, military issues, and so on and so forth. Sure, but if something is Turing complete, you can program in it like, what do you mean Turing complete? I've not heard that phrase before. So yeah, as this is saying, if you're going to increase taxes on cars, then you also have to start making public transport, mass transit much more affordable, if not free, to offset it. Especially, otherwise you end up harming those who are struggling economically. Turing complete. Okay, I will take this down. I'll look this up later. Did he share that? What? There was a video shared, and I need to find that link, otherwise I'm going to lose it. Who shared that second thought link? If you can share it again. I didn't copy it down. Get back down. It's basically like minimal amount of operations needed. Oh, okay. Interesting. Interesting. All right. It's 47. We haven't even gotten through our first article yet. That's okay. We have good conversations today. None of these claims seem valid when looking at data from the actual cases of fare free public transit. First of all, each and every fare abolition program appears to generate a significant increase in the number of passengers. In Tallinn, within 3 years of fare abolition, the number of passengers increased by 14%. In the same time span in Albang, whose public transport network had clearly been underused, the number of passengers went up by a stunning 135.8%. Can such an increase in passengers, whether they previously used cars, bicycles, or walked, be considered a negative phenomenon? Although it was clearly not among the main aims of the policy, fare-free public transit nonetheless attracted some car users to public transport. In Tallinn, the share of public transport increased by 9%, and that of cars decreased by 3%. In Albang, although no precise data is available, a smaller shift to public transport has been observed in passenger surveys. 20% of new passengers who used to drive claim to have abandoned their car precisely because of free rides. Finally, while in Tallinn, as well as Albang, the quality of public transport significantly increased before fare abolition. It continued to do so not just despite, but precisely because of fare-free public transit. Providing free rides to passengers generated even stronger political support for developing public transport, which in both cities stands at the center of the political agenda. Socially just, politically transformative. Yeah, the more you increase social programs, the better off the people are, the happier they're going to be. Like if you talk about getting rid of the National Institute of Health in Britain, those are fighting words. Them is fighting words. The third set of arguments in the debate about fare-free public transit views the policy not in terms of its economic viability or contribution to sustainable development, but its potential to facilitate a profound and long-term social and political transformation. The fundamental value of fare abolition lies in simplifying the way public transport is used. It can be taken by anybody at any time, according to any needs they may have. Public transport is thus imagined not as a commodity, but as a common good. Yes, common good. Similar to many other public services such as healthcare, education, parks, roads, sidewalk, cycling paths, street lights, lampposts, libraries, schools, kindergartens, or playgrounds. Yeah, exactly right. This should be seen as a common good, as a public service. Transportation is a human right, and it should be seen as a human right, like housing, food, clothing, education, healthcare, and all those sorts of things. I know, we keep expanding what it means, all these things that are considered, quote, human rights, but these are fundamentally the things that are required for people in this day and age to a chance to feel human. Internet should be free, and it should be considered a human right. We keep expanding what Maslow's hierarchy of needs it ends up covering what is considered a human right and what it takes to live a life in today's modern world. Just as in the case of these services, we could imagine public transport being continuously provided free of charge, regardless of whether it's needed in a given moment or not. After all, you don't have to insert coins to light an individual lamppost on your way home at night or pay for every minute spent in a park or library. In this sense, fare-free public transit introduces a different logic into transport. It moves away from market-oriented focus on profitability and demand management. It directly challenges a free market dogma that continues to envisage payment as a way of assuring that infrastructure is respected. It would be free. It would be awesome. And again, our cities need to be designed from the ground up for public transportation. Sustainable energy, vertical farms, healthcare, and all that sort of stuff. Make lives a lot better for everyone. For some municipal officials, it fits the socialist vision of transport as a public, accessible, and affordable service. For others, it expresses a more radical anti-capitalist principle of decommodifying common goods and services and signals a transition from customer passengers to citizens. Abolishing fares may be seen as a way of challenging biopolitical control over passengers, exercised through ticketing and surveillance, which is often accompanied by policing strategies that focus especially on undocumented users. We can find more ways to make public transport more social, though. The silence in those places kind of sucks, but nobody expects it differently. Okay. Luxy, it's good to see you, man. I hope you have a great weekend. Stay safe. Make it more social. Interesting. Well, sure. I mean, so here in the United States, right? If you compare the trains and stuff to what you find in Europe, I mean, the stuff here it's really, our mass transit here is garbage. And part of that is going to be, part of the reason why it's so silent is because people are suffering. The systemic and structural violence inherent to high levels of inequality in this country make people miserable and cranky, and our mass transit isn't kept up and it doesn't look good. It looks like crap. So if you want it to be more social, you have to pay for it. But people aren't going to be as social if they're struggling just to working their 3 jobs to not be homeless at a bar or gaming consoles in trains or something. I'm sure, but that takes money. That'd be more money. But that would be interesting. I mean, you could have a whole car, right, every so often that, is meant to be a social area. You could definitely do that. And I think maybe in some European trains, they kind of do that sort of a thing. If they don't, they should, but that's kind of the next step. But a lot of those rides aren't necessarily long enough for that sort of a thing. Get a 4, 5, or 10 minute, maybe get a 10-minute jot down to somewhere, you might have enough time to play a game. Or a small store on there. Something to buy something, sure, like an airplane. Netherlands. Yeah, you guys got it good. So jealous. All right. Yeah, so here, I think for trains between countries, I bet you do. Yeah. I've only taken one train. Well, 2 trains, actually. I was in from, Czech Republic to Germany. I think Germany to Belarus. Is that right? Germany to Moscow. No, actually, I think I took trains to all those. Germany to Moscow, and then Moscow to Belarus. Something like that. It's been a long time. Long time ago. Yeah, mass transit. We need mass transit. Finally, providing unconditional access to public transport has been praised for directly addressing the issue of social exclusion, inequality, and transport poverty. I'm talking about increasing accessibility for lower income passengers means creating a more socially just transport system. A fare-free network shows solidarity with the weak, with those who cannot afford a car, and those who are dependent on public transport who are particularly affected by its drawbacks. Yeah, that's not likely. America's too far gone. I mean, what's the recent statistic that the top 1% holds more wealth than the middle 60% or something like that? I think we went over that article. The level of inequality here is just, it's through the roof. We have the highest level of inequality in the developed world. I mean, with as much control as the corporations have and the 1% has over, I mean, they own our government, they own our politicians. It's not likely that anything's going to change in anytime soon. Well, it is kind of happening. We got, Bernie's kind of spearheaded that and made leftism of a sort to be more apparent. AOC and the squad have been winning, right? So it's slowly, yeah, sure, we can slowly be changing, but it's not going to be changing. It's not changing in any speed that's going to make a difference in the short term. There have been some socialist mayors winning, which is kind of good, where something like this could be done, like Kashama Swant in Seattle, or something like that. And there's a few other places where this is happening. Supply chain breakdowns. Yep. Once you can't consume in a capitalist society, the whole experience breaks down. Well, it'll only break down for those of us who are not in the 1%, right? Us peasants, it'll break down for us. And then the violence starts while the 1% and their military mercenaries will protect their 1% masters and live just fine for a while. That outcome is clearly visible in Tallinn. Providing unconditional access to public transport resulted in increased use among the unemployed, 32%, and low-income groups, 26%, among residents with income less than 300 euros per month. Ooh. Buses and trams are used more heavily by residents on parental or home leaves, 20%, and pensioners, 17%. This phenomenon is visible across age groups, and particularly among the youth, 21% among 15 to 19-year-olds. The middle age, 16% among 40 to 49-year-olds, and the elderly, 19% among residents between 60 and 74-year-olds. Rationing by capital, same as at the education, healthcare. Yeah, I mean, they try to destroy it as much as they can because, the rich can afford their private institutions, where us peasants, we can't. We have to suffer with whatever they have. And the more we have to struggle with crappy healthcare, crappy education, crappy transportation, right? And wage slavery and debt slavery, the more we don't have the ability to fight back or even realize what the hell's going on. Austerity for the plebes and socialism for the rich. The use of public transport has increased in post-Soviet housing estates where a large share of Russian-speaking Tallinners live, facilitating integration for that ethnic group. At the same, use has been on the rise in middle-class neighborhoods, showing that free rides are not just attractive for the poor. It is clear, however, that fare-free public transit would not solve all of our problems. Rather, at best, it would represent the first step towards a wider transformation of the power relations that shape transport. Against mobility experts who claim that passengers are more concerned with issues of safety, frequency, reliability, and availability of transport, a variety of organizations and movements have campaigned for fare abolition. One of their many examples is the Movimento Pass Livre, free fare movement that emerged in Brazil during protests against an increase in public transport fares across the country in June 2013. The question of increased ticket prices was important not only as a sign of stark inequality between high mobile car driving urbanites and the urban poor who have no choice but to use public transport. Fare-free public transit also constituted a rallying cry against the continuing commodification of public services and their imposition of purely economic, rational, and sustainable considerations. People, Death Priest, how you doing? People who are for vaccine mandates should be lined up against the wall and shot. I completely disagree. That's pretty messed up, frankly. Although, yes, sounds appropriate for someone called Death Priest. Fair call. Fair call. Yeah, no, and I'm torn on this issue. It's obviously I see because I wasn't going to get the vaccine for several years until the vaccine was tested, and there's plenty of time because of at least where I was at that point. But I got the vaccine because B117 was coming and now Delta is coming, so I definitely got the vaccine. I understand the hesitance. We can get into the racism of vaccines and that sort of a thing, but yeah, shooting people who talk about vaccine mandates isn't a good idea. Definitely not good policy. Very poor policy. Okay, how much do we have left here? I don't know if we have time to get through it because we're already at. No, we don't have. Oh, okay. We'll get through this. We'll finish this. We're gonna finish this today. What about the workers? In addition to this debate, the issue of fare-free public transit reflects on the position of public workers. How does a switch to a fare-free system affect them? In many cities, including Tallinn and Albang, fare-free public transit has been applauded by drivers for improving their labor conditions. Even if working hours and salaries remain the same, drivers no longer have to sell and monitor tickets, which used to be a source of considerable stress. Shooting people who want to take your freedom is a good policy. No, death is a pretty good start. This comes down to take away your freedom. Okay, so Republicans, that's their primary goal, destroying our freedoms for fun and profit. Now, Democrats also do that too, because they're both corporate whores. But murdering people isn't a good place to start. Any school-age child in America has long been mandated to get vaccines. Exactly right. Going to school, there are vaccine requirements for decades and decades, probably over 50 years. And to go to certain countries, there are vaccine mandates too, especially if you're going into Central and South America, where you've got, Africa, malaria, dengue fever, and that sort of stuff. In areas where you have certain sorts of diseases which are very geographically specific, they require vaccines too. Anyone in the military, yep, has been mandated to get vaccines. And merchant marines, yep. Yeah, and even George Washington mandated a vaccine for the military, for smallpox specifically. Now, don't get me wrong, I get why people are freaking out about it, but from their standpoint. But ultimately, I'm torn on the issue. It's a public health issue, but it's like you're saying, it is a freedom thing too. Those mandates, vaccines were for a virus that's sufficiently lethal enough to warrant a vaccine in the first place, and you can't eradicate. Well, yeah. Well, oh my God, we're gonna do this. COVID is at least 100 times more deadly than the flu is, and significantly, at least 10 to 100 times more infectious than COVID is. It's not the same thing. Or would you accept that? If you don't care about people dying, do whatever the hell you want. You have a penchant for murdering people, so and only for old people, it's pretty high. The primary cause of deaths for cops is literally COVID. Yeah, it's killing lots of people, and if we don't stop it, well, we're not gonna be able to stop it because capitalism, honestly. The systemic and structural racism inherent to capitalism. We're screwed as far as that's concerned. So even that should show even if cops are supposed to have dangerous jobs. Cops. Yeah. Wow. All right. The shift to fare-free public transit also means that drivers no longer have to count cash at the end of their working day. In Albang, one driver told me that the fare-free public transit is heavenly. It means no more stress about fare dodging, checking tickets. With fare-free public transit, the driver can focus on driving and welcoming passengers. That's it. Oh yeah. The policy transformed the job of the bus driver, who now only has one main question in mind: driving the bus well. The shift has not been entirely positive for all workers. In Tallinn, as many as 70 out of 80 ticket controllers were made redundant. In Albang, the ticket inspectors were made responsible for maintaining security board buses, since initially there were widespread concerns that fare abolition would result in vandalism. Once security issues were quickly understood to be minor, inspectors were further directed to supervise the driver's attitude and performance instead of monitoring passengers. They now monitor other workers. The decreased scope of duties under fare-free public transit leaves the position of drivers within their respective transport agencies the same, if not weaker. In Tallinn, although drivers can join a company-based trade union, their actual capacity to engage in collective bargaining continues to be severely limited by a system in which individual salary bonuses aren't awarded to employees who raise objections to a company policy. As one driver told me, with or without fares, there is a fixed bonus every month. If you drive on time, the bonus comes, but if you make a complaint, then the bonus can be reduced. Yeah, and this is why everyone needs to be unionized, period. Unionize all the things. In Albang, fare-free public transit was introduced in the context of a shift from a family-like business to a privatized network run by a local branch of Veolia, the French transnational company. For one local trade unionist, there is a major contradiction between abolishing fares and letting a private company manage it. Although Veolia adhered and adjusted to fare-free public transit, it simultaneously implemented a series of measures rationalizing the public transit network. For instance, drivers' individual punctuality began to be measured by a GPS system, and their responsibility for managing the company gradually diminished. The introduction of fare-free public transit complicated the situation rather than empowered them in their struggle to join trade unions of their choice and to have a voice in the debate about the company's policy. I don't get why people are anti-vax, to be honest. I mean, it's in the interest of capital that people are vaccinated so they can get back to being exploited. No, you're right. I mean, a lot of companies are requiring vaccination. I mean, in the Wall Street and a whole bunch of places like that, they're definitely requiring it. And the Republican Party is taking a stance for anti-vaxxers, even though they're pro-business side. Well, yeah, it's because, they're Republicans doing everything they can to create culture war is their thing. I guess that's the same thing for the border. Yeah, they're pro-business. My freedoms, exactly. Don't get me wrong. I wasn't going to get the vaccine because of my concerns with it, but I eventually did. So I do get some of the issues, but getting beyond the massive stream of disinformation that's going through, especially with Trump, especially with the horrors that Trump created. I mean, that's probably a lot of what we're dealing with. And of course, Fox News and other OAN and all the other right-wing nutjobbery going on. Having illegal immigrants to exploit is incredibly good for capital. True statement. Yeah, and that's why, we need to open our borders. We need to have a giant-ass INS facility at the Mexican border. Oh my god, we should take a look. Oh, we'll take a look at that later. I'm gonna get through this fucking article if it kills me. Transport is not only about transport. The controversy created by the question of fare abolition reveals a wider problem regarding how urban transport is conceived and analyzed. The debate about transport seems to be dominated by technical and economic narratives, while the explicitly social and political dimensions of mobility are often sidelined. Because there's no money in taking care of people, right? Yes, we need to legalize immigrants, exactly. In the particular case of fare-free public transit, approaching the policy as a transport mechanism generates a series of myths and misunderstandings that are not substantiated by evidence from actually existing cases of fare-free public transport programs. Although fare abolition is assumed to break the bank, in reality it may help generate new revenue by attracting new tax-paying residents. Oh, yep. Or raising local taxes. while it's attacked as a measure that fails to make cities more sustainable and livable, again, you do this fare-free public transit in concert or in hand with sustainable energy, municipalizing the energy industry and making it sustainable. That solves that problem. There's evidence that free riders are, to some extent, attractive to car drivers, and thus help increase the use of public transport, which in turn means less air pollution and noise. The quality of free transport services is not necessarily worse than paid transport. Fare-free public transit can act as a powerful symbolic statement of political support for collective transport. Oh, you wait and see what happens when we start getting flooded with climate refugees. Oh yeah, I mean that is going to be an issue, and I talk about that in my policies, right? That is a huge issue. If either we tackle climate change like I talk about, or that's exactly what's going to happen. It's going to get significantly worse, and pretty much what fuckhead Biden has done, he sent people on horseback with whips to whip people away. It's going to be that, but it's going to be worse. There's going to be guns, and people are going to get shot at some point. That's just the way neoliberal fuckheads do things, murdering people instead of dealing with it. I mean, how much? If the United States was smart, again, you would have that massive facility for INS down there at the border, and then you would set up a giant city there to act as a transitional state where people stay there for like 6 months to 2 years to teach English and to do cultural and work training and stuff like that, and then release them. Max on pole position. How you doing? And then you can find out where they can go for housing and for a job, and then send them forward. I mean, we're gonna have a flood of people coming, and you vet them and keep families together. Exactly right, and that's super important. Otherwise, if we don't do that, that's a war crime if we separate them. In other words, transport policies are not only about transport. It is when looking at fare-free public transit as an urban policy rather than a transport policy that we can begin to fully understand its ambition and impact. This requires seeing it not in a vacuum of mathematical modeling or analysis of traffic flows, but in the context of the specific place in which it is designed and put into practice, undergirded by power relations and political struggles interacting with its spatial and social context, getting technical here, affecting the labor condition of its workers. This means that while the policy of abolishing public transport fares is obviously related to the field of transport, it cannot be understood as a transport policy alone. Yeah, it's an inequality one. That's the big thing. That is the big thing. It's an inequality and a human right one is where we need to, when it really matters. All right, everyone. Great chat today. Awesome. We got through one article off and on. It's a long article, very long article. Yeah, I'll go ahead and share this again. It's on public transport. It's really good. It gives a lot of the articles off and on about all the pro and the cons for public transit. It's a really good article. I think I may need to update my policies with this sort of a thing. It's easy to implement in urban areas, in the suburbs. That are the problem. Right, exactly. And I'm in about free public transport, but with limitation. Such as what sort of limitations? Right, like in my town, we're 12,000 people. We're kind of a rural town, small. Like for us, we couldn't do something like a train or we do a train? A train wouldn't work. We'd have to do buses or vans or something like that. I mean, like in Belarus, they do a lot of that. They have a lot of buses and vans for public transit, in addition to their underground to their subway and trains and stuff like that. Yeah, no, exactly. That's exactly right. And that's kind of one of the reasons why I haven't quite gone there quite yet. When I look at my policies, I'm trying to honestly get rid of rural areas because that's where a lot of conservatism is. We need to try and concentrate our people into much larger urban spaces that are builded up so that we don't have to worry about this mass transit thing, right? And we can help reduce the how much conservatism exists within within society. It's difficult. It's difficult to figure out. It requires, dealing with this and pretty much almost all of our other social issues requires us to completely remodel and redesign our cities from the ground up. You can't, what's the quote? Well, from and to your work is okay, but sitting in public transport the whole day without a real goal. Well, of course. I mean, that's an issue. If they're homeless, then what? Yes, that is a part of my policies. Okay, here, let me put it here. No, it's not economic, it's environmental. No, hold on. People should not be homeless, true statement. Well, in this country, that's a thing. But in your country, you lucky bastard, it may not be. Yes, homelessness, housing is a human right. That is the way it should be done. Okay, again, here's my environmental policies. God, okay, sustainable communities. Where did I write about this? Let's go down here. Yeah, I'll go ahead and throw this in here for you so you can take a look. Okay, so here's the quote. We cannot manifest the world of tomorrow within cities that have been designed using the values, methods, technologies, and plans of the past. In some way, we can say that the urban designs we have helps to determine our social values. Because if you have the sickest strategy is that in the relentless slaughter of the planet Earth, our corporate overlords have gained nothing of substance. Imagine ending all life on the planet because you never engaged with your spirit, just barely sustained. Yeah, but they'll be dead by then, so they don't care. Right? They don't have to deal with it. They get to live in massive luxury while everyone suffers and dies. So, sociopathy. That is the sociopathy, and in some cases, well, especially like this, psychopathy inherent with inequality. We also have homeless people, but that's mainly because psychological problems. Still, people should have. Yeah, exactly. That's Finland, I think, is getting rid of homelessness, and they use housing first as the model. And I have that in my policies. Homelessness is due to lack of affordable. Yeah. Lack of affordable housing is a big part of it, and it's getting worse here because of the eviction crisis and the pandemic and the large companies buying up housing. Prices are skyrocketing. It's horrific. Housing should be a human right. We start with housing first, and then work on other stuff. You can't really work on like mental disorders or anything like that until people have a house, until they have housing. Housing, giving someone a house is 3 times cheaper, just from an economic standpoint, 3 times cheaper than policing it. Okay, so what I say, actually, I talk about the housing thing in a few different places. And it's all here in the environmental thing. Let's see. Okay, so in order to really effectuate many of the economic, technological, social, environmental, and sustainability changes that we will require in order to transform humanity and move us into the future, a completely new, intelligent, planned, and sustainable urban design will be needed, one that will reflect our more modern planning, values, and technologies. We need buildings, houses, and infrastructure designed from the ground up with an urban plan which is conducive to more modern... Did I? Oh, I repeated that. Holy editing, Batman. That such plans to thrive there and be a logical result of them. We need to design them holistically to support a specific population. So that's all. Okay, so this might be kind of a reaction, a result of capitalism. If you're not useful, then you can just go ahead and die. Well, we don't here in the United States. I mean, well, we do have a shortage of affordable housing, but it's not that we don't have housing, because in the United States, we have, for every homeless person, we have 31 places to live sitting empty. It's the fact that housing can be profited from. That is the core issue. There's no profit in helping people. That is the fundamental problem. Keeping the homeless and having them abused by the police is a deterrent to the masses. Get out of line and see what can. Yeah. Oh yeah, definitely. And that's the way they want to keep on doing it. And then you just keep putting them in prison. And then the private prisons stay full, and the corporations make big. You have 300,000 homes short. Okay, well then that's something that the government can deal with. I mean, they can build housing. Like there have been, a few countries which have done public housing. They can do it. That can be done. That can be dealt with. That can be dealt with. I think you should try and accommodate as much different people from different walks of life. Definitely. And I also say that we should try and make our communities intentionally diverse, specifically so our children have access to the breadth of what humanity is, so that you can reduce bigotry and fear. Right. So our schools and our teachers and our families should be, diverse in skin color, ethnicity, religion, familial composition, socioeconomic, and all the things. It's hard to be afraid of things that you've already been exposed to. Yeah, I hope Trump he's a liar, a con man, and a fraud. It's just a matter, he should have been in jail decades ago. But rich people, laws aren't for rich people, right? That we can't build all those houses because of pollution laws. Well, that's something that your country can deal with that, right? I mean, there are, we just went over an article talking about sustainable cement that reduces the carbon footprint. There are ways of dealing with it. I know. Thank you, Girly Bear. Thank you. Trying to get going here. There are ways of dealing with it, Anaholics. It's just the government has to figure it out. And the Sweden, Norway, Finland, Netherlands, they have the values to make that work. There are ways to deal with it. I don't know the specifics there. Okay, thank you. But it can be done. Build more housing and find a sustainable way to do it. And honestly, when I'm talking about, building brand new cities from the ground up, they should build a brand new city from the ground up for 300,000 people, sustainability, mass transit, vertical farms, and then deal with it that way. A way to pollute less, and then we are allowed to build more. Yeah. And that can be done through, obviously giving money to more research and development, that sort of a thing. All right, guys, I gotta go. Girly Bear is gonna get mad at me. So, thank you all for joining me and gifting me with your time. I really do appreciate it. I stream Tuesdays at 5 p.m. Central, Thursdays 5 p.m. Central, Saturdays 3 p.m. Central. I wish to live long enough to see that news. Oh, so do I. So do I. So if you want to join me then, if you want to follow me on Facebook, Twitter, my blog, my policies, all that stuff is down there in Twitch. If you want to take a look at my About page, my Patreon page is there too. If you want to support me. Any last comments before we call this a day so I can get going? Great conversation today, guys. Thank you so much. Whoa. His Truth platform is using code from open source social media platform and claiming it's their code. The funniest part is them once again benefiting from public domain, which is kind of like communism. The other funny thing is that the platform they're using code from is called Mastodon. And the mission was to create friendlier and less racist alternatives to Twitter. Who? Which platform? Oh, was that Trump? Yeah, and Alex, man, have a great weekend. Thank you so much. Oh yeah, Trump's yeah, fuck Trump. I hope he goes to jail. I hope his whole family goes to jail. He's just horrible. Just horrible. Oh, so Truth platform is Trump's platform. I'll take a look at that. I'll copy that down. Gotcha. Okay, good to know. I will take a look at that. All right, guys. Thank you so much. I got going. Have a great weekend, everyone. See you guys later. Peace out.
It's just me and you. Let's make up all the rules. Count to 10 and watch the stars turn blue. Watch the stars.